Hey there, thanks very much for joining us on the Go Get It podcast. My name is Rob Butler. For those of you that are creative, you like marketing, and you love retail, Ashley Gorrie, the CEO of Gorrie, works with the biggest brand names in the world. What she's able to do is design a strategy and a methodology, taking a product from its infancy and bringing it to market to lure the client in. Her evolution as an entrepreneur and working in a family business with over 130 years of history is pretty spectacular. So if you want to learn from some of the best, stick around and let's go get it.
Let's go. Let's get it.
Ashley Gorrie joining us from Gorrie, CEO and President.
So happy to be here, and I'm so happy to see you. And as I said, you don't age, and so I'm jealous.
A lot of makeup on this end.
Yeah, it's been like 12, 15 years since we last saw each other, so I'm really happy to catch up.
I think at least so. And one of the fun parts or ways that we open up the Go Get It podcast is just what's any recollection of where we might have crossed paths. And it just gives the viewers an idea of what our initial introduction might have looked like or how we kind of rolled in the same circles at a certain point in time. And it just really sets the stage for today's discussion. Anything that comes to mind? And if not, I can go first.
Well, Ski World. I think Ski World and then definitely Western.
Well, those are two good ones. So a lot of our guests, there's definitely some Western connections there, and too many mutual friends, that is to mention, not including your husband, who I would have spent a lot of time with when we were young growing up, and then through the ski industry. So that being said, can you bring us up to speed, and myself for that matter? When you were coming out of university, I'm under the impression that you did move into a marketing, branding, retail product salesy piece, and you can talk about the brand or not, but I'm just kind of curious, was that always something that was of interest to you when you were coming upon graduation, or how did that come to be?
Yeah. So I should mention Gorrie is a family-based business. So, it was established in 1882. And so
Say that again.
Yeah. I know when you write in, like, when was your company established? Like 1882. I am the fifth generation to run this business.
Wow. That's amazing. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think the statistics are like less than 1% of family businesses make it this far, but we are still going 14 decades later. So long story short is it's a family-based business. So when I was in university, there wasn't a lot of pressure to put on me in terms of getting into the family business, but I will always loved marketing. It was like marketing and business, creativity, and blending it with problem solving. So I didn't start the family business right out of the gate, but I did join, in my mid-20s, and it was a steep learning curve. Family-based businesses is one thing, so happy to talk through family-based businesses, succession planning, how that works. But Gorrie is a design agency. So we design and build retail stores. We design fixtures and displays, trade shows, events, etc. We work in the North American marketplace, so both US and Canada. And it's that perfect blend of, roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, but, because you're building something physical where people are experiencing it firsthand. And so it's a fun job. Never a dull day.
Now, when I think about trade shows, you talked about, is it the product that is manufactured? Is this all part of what you do and you present back to a prospective client what the visuals and the display and the layouts might look like, or is it even broader than that?
Yeah, well, we've been moving it in to have a larger aperture. COVID was actually a really big eye opener for me. Physical retail environments being closed for such an extended period of time. So as part of like a risk analysis said, okay, well, yes, we design and build. So we're industrial designers and interior designers. So if you're, coming out of school and you're studying the craft of industrial design, which is product design, but ours is slightly different in that we combine it with environmental design as well. So that you're looking at how a brand would be, translated translated into an experience or an environment, or how you're articulating what you're going to sell within a 2 foot, 4 foot, 8 foot span of space within a retailer. So it's not necessarily the design and production of the products itself. It's helping those brands show up to sell and articulate the point of differentiation.
Well, you touched upon COVID, and maybe talk me through that. I'd be kind of interested in terms of when you were, 2018 going into it, and then how you may have had to shift your thought process, or did your client base change, or the medium that you were using to target a particular audience? Did that evolve, or what did that look like?
Great question. So pre-COVID, we were actually larger than we'd ever been as an agency. I never understood in terms of our industry, which would be called below the line or trade marketing. But it's all very project based, and it didn't operate as like an agency of record model where you would have an agency who supports you and makes sure that your brand looks consistent everywhere a customer would engage it. So whether or not you're in China or in Argentina or Canada, you're having the same experience that the brands, of the brand. So, that was the messaging and the model that we built. So we became the agency of record of brands like, Meta for retail for their portal product launch, Logitech for ultimate ears. And we were manufacturing all over the world and, distributing the sort of same experience for customers all over the world. And it was such an exciting time of growth for the organization. And then March 20th hit, and it just went off like a light bulb. And that was probably the hardest time I've ever experienced in my role. And I think a lot of the lessons that I've learned from my career, I've learned lessons from my career throughout the time, out of university through to, COVID and even today. And it has helped me articulate exactly what it is that we want to be and establish the values for our organization. So, while it was a challenging time, it did show me that we didn't have enough risk diversification in our portfolio. And so, a portfolio of services, I should say. So, relying too heavily on physical environments, we needed to change how people perceive us. And so we actually now are a digital and content agency as well as physical. So we help brands align themselves vertically so that, when you're establishing a brand look and feel, we help it all the way through the customer experience. So essentially omnichannel.
And then as a result of that, has your target audience changed, do you think, through that time? Or is it still the bigger players? You talked about Meta, being one of the biggest in the world. Is it still that? Or do you go, I don't know what the right term is in your industry, but can you go to a smaller or a mid-sized type company as well? Or is it really just the big brands that you focus on?
No, we help smaller brands, but we do work with large agencies. So how it changed for us in terms of our model was, I was looking at the world out, and wanting to take a brand and how it would be set up all over the world. And one of the things that post-COVID made me realize, actually post-COVID and now this, the new US administration and its perspective on trade. And it's really interesting to look at the Canadian marketplace and help brands understand and establish in Canada. So we've actually really focused on more of a consultancy model as well as being that agency of record for brands coming into Canada. So it really the size is it's relative. You have to show up in one way to your customers and have them understand who you are and create that brand alliance or allegiance. But we're still working with some of the big brands like Google and Revlon and stuff like that. So small and big, but it really depends on what your goals are. We try to be as creative as possible.
And then for this particular audience, where is somewhere that they might have come across either a product or, you've talked about the brands, but like literally interacted with one of the creative pieces that you've worked on?
Yeah, I mean, if you walked into any Best Buy, you're going to see our work. We work with a number of consumer electronic brands within, so the shop and shops, the displays, anything that you're seeing there. We are Google's design agency of record in Canada. So you would see us, anything that you see as far as Google online and in store for their physical products, Nest, Pixel, is us. And, we're also very established in the home improvement category. So if you walked into a Lowe's, any paint display essentially is manufactured by us.
So pretty much any store I walk into today, I will have come across one of your products. I get it.
Not necessarily any store, but we're fairly industry specific.
I love it. So noting that it's 5 generations, you've been incredibly successful taking on the reins in that role. And how many years would you say you wouldn't have started at that level when you came into the family business? How many years have you been in the current title or role you've been in?
This year is my 20th anniversary.
It is 20 okay.
years. 20 years at Gorrie. Yeah, I know. I feel really old saying that, but yes, 20 years at Gorrie. And, but it's, I couldn't picture myself anywhere else. I mean, it wasn't always like, sunshine and roses and unicorns, but it has been just a very exciting, such a depth of learning, and ever changing. So, it really has been a good career path for me to take, especially with my love of creativity and problem solving.
Well, you told me, or at least highlighted a couple of the different skill sets and elements that would pertain to a role such as this. So switching gears now in terms of the audience we're targeting, what are some of the things, meaning 3, that you would highlight in no particular order that are the most important things that they might want to think about or avoid doing as they pursue the career choice that they're working toward, whether it be in your industry or any other? What's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
I think the first one for me is, how people talk about office wife, office husband, or whatever.
Yes.
Find yourself an office dad, dad or mom.
Mentor.
Mentor. Yeah, I have, but mentor feels very formal, and I've had the great benefit of a number of incredible advisors throughout my life. And most of all that my father, he doesn't work in the business anymore, but he is involved, but he still comes to the office every day. And that's really nice for me because, the time period that I've spent, I got to ask questions, but he also explained to me or held me back when I wasn't ready. And I think it's, we are a small organization. So, I appreciate that in large organizations that they have this more formally laid out. But, you want to find somebody who is not afraid to hold you back. And you need to respect and understand the reasoning behind that. And there is pushing. People will always push you to the next level. It's really understanding the craft that you're trying to hone that is important. And so that's one piece that I think is, and then that's why I call it, office dad, because it's somebody who is less formal than a mentor or an advisor. It's somebody who is really understanding what your goals are, and is going to take you along for the ride. And that you're going to start learning through osmosis through them. And I think that's one of the most important things that I had and the benefit of working with my father.
I'm thinking through it as not the actual, let's call it father or mother or influencer on you. If you're on the receiving end of it, like I'm trying to think through this. How do you know that what that senior person is sharing with you is genuine? Or I know that was your father, so maybe it's a trickier one to analyze, but I'm just curious. I'm thinking about big corporations. There's so many people that are, competing against one another. I wonder how you find the genuine individual that is looking out for your best interest. And I don't know that there's a right answer. It just comes to mind. It's something that I wonder how we could help people think about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it has to be somebody within the organization. Now, my opportunity was that, yes, he was in the organization. I started in project management. He wouldn't let me go into sales until I really understood what it took to run programs within our company. But I have incredible advisors who are 20, 30 years older than me, who I have sought out to help me see things from a different perspective. And you want them to be the devil's advocate. You want them to push back on you and, somebody to riff off ideas, but who's coming from a different perspective and who is coming with all that work, career, life. Like by life knowledge, I mean like bringing things in that they still say to me, Ash, you've got 3 young kids. Do you really want to be in an airplane every week? And it's talking about you as a whole person and not just you as the work. That's what I think is important. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody within the organization, but find yourself somebody who, you really admire and look up to, who you feel close and comfortable enough that they can challenge you, as a whole person.
I think it's an interesting reminder. And again, those that are a little bit more senior or have more experience in their careers, like we do think of lots of people that have worked with career coaches or just great sounding boards that you actually may pay out of pocket for. But I have to admit that the longer you're in a particular role as well, I think there's a ton of value to have an objective sounding board, especially those with experience that'll say, oh yeah, I've dealt with that 5 times before. That's nothing new. Here's how I dealt with it. Here's how I might have changed what I had done. But I think it's a super valuable reminder that you don't know everything and you probably never will. So it's always great to have a good reference. And what you're referring to is I say daddy, but I don't know if that's the right, I don't want to say it.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky that it was my father. Believe me, there's a lot of family businesses that would say it wasn't their father. But I also do have incredible, father or mother. I have incredible advisors who, I've done my MBA with who, right. I just think the world of, and I asked them out for lunch one day and he said 100%, I'm happy to sit down with you and have a lunch every quarter. And, don't be afraid to ask.
Good. I love it. That's number one. Second thing that comes to mind.
One of the things that I didn't do, and I think was really, beneficial to me in my last 10 years has been to establish what my values are, like my real true, like what I want. And so this is for an entrepreneur, I think, is what are the values with which you're establishing your organization with, if you're an entrepreneur? And, because there will come a time when an opportunity that is, larger than life, that you might have to question what are my values versus what is the business opportunity. And sometimes bigger isn't better, right? Like it's important for us to establish, what is it that you really set out to do to make a difference, whether it's service, product, as an entrepreneur, and then, bring yourself back to the question, what would I love? I've had career coaches and I've had life coaches and it's really important, I think, to sit down and take stock of, if all else were true and I wanted to do X, what would I love? And then what are the steps to get me there? And I think bringing yourself back to those values is really important because along the way you will be challenged, and it's really good to use as a North Star and a guiding post.
Ash, do you think it's a reflection of your own personal beliefs, or do you think of it separate from the company and what that should stand for? Or is it just an extension of you?
Oh, great question. It actually leads into my third point, but if you're an entrepreneur, and yes, I have taken over this organization from my father. And so while I'm not a founder, I still very much consider myself an entrepreneur. In terms of my day to day and how I have taken over this company. But, it is very difficult to be an entrepreneur and not mesh the two together. So I think as a leader, if you are creating a team and creating a company and it's growing rapidly, it's the product, yes, but it's also the leadership that people join an organization to be part of. And, it's what that company stands for comes from somewhere, and is coming from, I would assume, why you started it in the first place. So I think it's both. I don't think you can uncouple yourself, which is what leads to my third point, which is make sure you know what your non-negotiables are when it comes to uncoupling yourself. You can so quickly become the business. And as running an organization, your health and happiness, is make sure that you build a very strong foundation in terms of your health and wellness and your sleep and, your exercise regime and everything. Because, not as a woman anymore. I think I would have said as a woman, you need to balance. Like, if I'm on an airplane every week for a couple of days, what are my non-negotiables? And it's that I need to be at pickup after school on Thursday and Friday. And so it's, I think there's a blend of that. So that was my third, which is, while knowing what your values are when it comes to a business, there's also knowing what your non-negotiables are when it comes to you and your health and personal. And that doesn't necessarily have to just be an entrepreneur. You have a lot of incredibly inspiring friends and peers who drive hard. And they, and you can sometimes lose yourself a little bit if you don't establish what those balancing points are.
And you talk about having 3 kids to balance as well. When you think about the values and not getting overcommitting, I guess I could call it, to the work piece at the expense of your personal piece, does that change over time? Is it fluid? Like, how do you get in a better rhythm with work at a certain point where you can default to spending more time there? I'm not sure. Like, not having been an entrepreneur myself, I assume that it's somewhat subjective and it's always changing. But what's your experience with that?
It is always changing, but one of the things that has happened more recently with my boys, and I think it's because they're getting older, is that I'm enlisting them in the celebrations of my wins and my losses. Because to point number 2 that we said earlier, you do kind of become your company, right? My company's a small organization, and, vacations can mean that I got to pop on the phone and I got to, talk to legal for an hour as much as they want me to be all in. But now they're excited when I get a call response from an RFP and they're sitting in the back seat and they're all like, trying to be quiet. And then, and they're all cheering, and I get off the phone and we've won, and they're like, you're cheering along. And so, there's nothing wrong to say that you can't blend the two. It's inevitable. It exists, but enlisting them helps that barrier to, they understand now, okay, mom's going away because, she won that RFP and that's so exciting and she's working hard on it. And I would say that is part of the values and part of the non-negotiables is like that they understand that they're part of this is, a team together.
No, I love it. I mean, having grown up in my personal family where my mom was the business person creating her company. So it doesn't sound like a huge departure. I couldn't remember being one of your kids, living through the trade shows that they were going on, the traveling, and, 6 a.m, they're leaving for Chicago to do some trade show. So yes, actually that brought back memories when you describe it that way, where Brooke, Ryan, and I would be thinking like that. And then as we got older, we got to actually go and then start to take part in some of these things. And I think in terms of sales and trade show work, that's probably through osmosis where we learned a lot of our skill sets. We weren't doing it for that reason, but it worked out that way. So
yeah,
I think the kids will benefit from that for sure. Okay, so these are the 3 most important things that you'd share with an audience. And then I'm just curious now, because you touched upon it at the beginning. You talked about the creative piece, the design piece. What do you think your super skill set is that's allowed you to really find your sweet spot in the company? You talk about and I don't feel this way, but not being an entrepreneur because of the multiple generations, but that business must look materially different than it would have 3 generations ago. So I think in that sense, you're absolutely an entrepreneur. Just because the name may have stayed similar doesn't mean the role's similar to what it was. So I think you're very much entrepreneurial, but I'm just kind of curious, what's the one skill set that you are able to lean into and really take advantage of for this type of role?
I think there's something very unique to being a translator. And by translator, I mean the ability to translate creativity into business solution. And that thread is a really, really important thing. And it doesn't, yes, we started with designing, window casings and displays and fixtures and trade shows, but that doesn't mean that the solution isn't a digital solution, right? It's listening to the challenge at hand and then translating and collaborating to come up with the solution that is going to solve that. And, working multi-dimensionally, is very, very important. I think, we're starting to see that come into play in business a lot more, where things haven't been as siloed as far as, your role and responsibility within an organization. But it was it's actually why I did my MBA, because I wanted to be able to learn, if I'm sitting in front of an executive team, I need to be able to answer procurement's question, CEO's question, marketing's question, the technology infrastructure question, and operations. Like, how am I solving a problem for all pieces across the board? And so there's an element of translation that's required. It's not just creative for creative sake. There's the art and science that is blended into it. And it's the ability to articulate that so that people understand the vision and the results.
So I have to tell you, I was really excited when you got back to me and said you'd join us on the Go Get It podcast. I've loved it. I've loved catching up. You're killing it. So I wish you all the luck in the world that you guys keep going on the trajectory that you are. And thanks very much for joining me today, Ashley.
Rob, you're the best. I'm so happy to see you. Anytime.
Well, hopefully we'll revisit it in 6 months from now.
Have me back. We can chit chat some more.
I love it.
Let's go!
Hey, this is Rob Butler on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate you listening to what it is we can bring to your career evolution. And if you liked our guest, feel free to 1, follow us, and 2, put a question in the reel, and hopefully our interviewee can respond to that question directly. With that, I'd like to encourage you to join us on next week's edition on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks again.